Everybody to our new and updated A Future by Design webinar series. We are absolutely thrilled today to have Joshua Ross and Adam McCurdie with us from Humanitix. Friends from way back. We actually accidentally met at a Creative Universe seminar in Melbourne quite some years ago. Welcome, Adam and Joshua. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Christina.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure to have you on the salon. And I just want everyone to know what your story is. Your story so excites me. From the beginning to where you are now, it's just one incredible journey. So please, I'm going to hand over the stage to you and tell us how Humanitix started, why it started, and a bit of the journey along the way.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, it started with me and Adam's friendship. We met in university days, and we were lucky enough to live together, travel together. We've now started Humanitix together, pretty much everything but marriage at this stage. And yeah, it was it was a pivotal moment when we were backpacking in Sri Lanka. It was shortly after, within a year of their civil war finishing, and we'd taken surfboards, but we were doing a bit of hiking. It was an amazing trip, and we were there for 2 to 3 months. And we were coming back. I was going into my full-time gig at a hedge fund, where Adam was coming back into his full-time IT management consulting gig after studying engineering, and both grappling with what we really wanted to do with our careers. And we knew we wanted to do something that could have impact, that could scale, that we'd be super proud of at the end of our lives, but also something that would stimulate us and challenge us. We just didn't have a good idea. So you get a lot of time traveling to have these conversations, and we made a commitment to each other, that a pact, that when we had a good idea, we'd support the other to do it. And we didn't know what that would be, but we'd act as one entity. And it was about 6-7 years later that, we were somewhat corporatized, but we still had our ideals and our vision, that we had the idea of Humanitix, and we teamed up, and that was about 5 years ago now, and the rest is bit of history. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
How did you actually come up with the idea for Humanitix? Was it something that one of you went, hey, I've got this idea, blah, and then it became this ideation, this layering of what it might be? How did that conversation start?
Sure. Well, we were incredibly inspired by Grameen Bank and Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for effectively founding the idea of microfinance as an awesome twist on capitalism for good. And so we recognized that maybe the biggest way we can have impact in the world, given our skill sets and degrees, was something commercial, but for good. And so we recognized that tech was the fastest growing industry, changing the world more than any other industry right now. It's also got the highest return on capital. And we thought, if we're going to create a social enterprise to change the world, why not try and make a tech charity that can deploy all those inherent strengths of tech companies, but to solve social problems? And through that investigation, we stumbled on ticketing, which we thought was incredibly ripe for disruption. Generally, people, they're sick of annoying booking fees. And we thought, if we can turn that into a way to give every disadvantaged child in the world a real shot at getting a quality education, and no matter what their background, being in a position to give back to their community, to thrive, to have dignity, that would be, what an awesome project to spend our lives on.
And it is, I love it. And it's also because you're part of the entertainment industry, you're part of the learning industry. We use you for the Singularity U Australia Summit and for other events that we have. So it's this, you're part of so many different communities. And what I loved, so we've also, I did some work with a charity, Centre for Hope. And at one point in time, I know that it was okay for us to nominate which charity it was. As you grew, that changed clearly. So how did that eventuate? I know that it was a necessity through the growth period and everything else that you had to go through. What was that growth journey like for you?
Yeah, I was going to say, it turned out to be the most phenomenal industry to go after, because as it turns out, everybody hates paying booking fees. They add up to billions of dollars across the globe. And we very quickly started to realize that, if you offer a very competitive platform to an organizer that's no compromise, try lower booking fees, and then donate all the profits into our education programs, that's really compelling. Naturally, we had to start small. So with a pretty simple platform that could only really cater for small, simple events. And so those were things like small little yoga classes, or maybe a cooking class, or, you're talking 10 to maybe 100 people gigs, community events with very simple ticketing requirements. And then over the time, we started to realize, well, hang on a minute, this is a game changer idea and something that's really compelling to event organizers. And what's holding us back is our technology. And so we decided, well, hang on, we've got to focus full time on this. And so at the very beginning, we decided that I would leave my job and give up my salary at my previous job. And as a result, Josh would stay in his job so that we could then share his salary, so that we could both be earning a living while simultaneously giving this a go. And so continue to build out our technology better and better until eventually Josh left his job to join me full time. And we were both simply volunteering at that stage for Humanitix, trying to get more and more organizers onto the platform while continually trying to make the platform better and better. A few months passed and some very amazing and courageous philanthropists signed up to support us. And that was then a game changer for us, because that allowed us to start building an engineering team. And with that engineering team, we could then start to build more and more sophisticated and compelling technology to go after those bigger, more sophisticated conferences and festivals and recurring events that happen in more sophisticated ways with better promotional tools. And simultaneously, we started to work out more compelling ways that event organizers could talk about the social impact that they're creating through simply switching to Humanitix, making it the biggest no-brainer ever. And that's led us to where we've got to today. So now we're in New Zealand, we're in Australia, we're in the United States, and really looking to accelerate there as things hopefully improve from a COVID perspective.
Yeah, so we did, I remember Center for Hope, and we changed the model there a bit. What we found as we scaled was that everyone had all these amazing grassroots projects, and lots of small events going on. We couldn't give to everything. We'd have more impact if we focused on projects we could really get behind, that could scale globally or nationally, that we could measure our impact on. We became really well focused on impact measurement, and there's a whole lot of school of thought around that, which is fascinating. But as part of that journey, the Atlassian Foundation, the Google Foundation backed us. And with that, in collaboration, we really refined our mandate and have put a bit more science behind how we scale our impact, not just the platform.
I love the fact too, I find that a really compelling part and very much a commitment part of your story, where one of you left work, you shared the wage, and I think you both moved back home, if I remembered that story properly as well. So it was, what can we do? And that's such a sign of absolute commitment and resilience, but also it is an entrepreneurial story. How many entrepreneurial stories start in garages and start with that shared commitment and that absolute drive. And I think I've always really admired that with what you're doing. How many people have you impacted? So at Singularity U Australia, we're huge on how many people we've impacted. I love the way you've got the running total, and for us to actually be able to see how many people we've impacted through using the site. How many people have you impacted through the monies that you've been able to raise for charities?
Yeah, it's a moving target, and it's also complicated by the fact that in those first 3 years we gave to a whole lot of different things. But just to give you some scale of it, like with our literacy and life skill programs for young girls, we've now given close to 150,000 days of education to young girls around the world. With our Indigenous scholarships program, they're incredibly expensive. They're taking incredibly disadvantaged Indigenous kids around Australia and putting the best educational resources around them, but seeing them through the whole of high school and then hopefully into university. And so it's less in numbers, but it's a much more deeper collaboration. And actually, one of the coolest things happened at the start of this year. We had our first Indigenous student, Tyrese, who is from regional New South Wales. When we funded his education through high school, he ended up graduating. He came in here for a 7-week paid internship to learn all about tech and sales. And now he's gotten into UNSW and is doing a commerce degree. And yeah, we're going to keep in touch with him and see how it goes. But yeah, it's scaling. The other thing we do is we improve accessibility at live events. So a lot of the disability groups around Australia have actually moved their ticketing over to us. We've built everything so like when you use our platform, the colors, the fonts, the vision, etc., is built so that people with, say, a vision impairment have a better time checking out. There's still so much work for us to do in that area, but very hard to know exactly how many people have used our platform that benefit from that. But it's yeah, those are the key things. And then charities can all use our platform at our sustainable cost price. So Cancer Council, United Nations, Vision Australia, they all use us, and instead of losing, you know, a couple of % of their ticket sales, that goes into their impact. And I don't know how many lives that changes because it's so diverse, but yeah.
I'd say multiple lives, and also it's that ripple effect. So you affect, you know, you've given 150,000 days of education, 150 days of education.
Yeah.
And that we know that education is such a strong proponent of pulling people out of poverty and giving them hope and aspiration. So who knows how many people that ripple effect, you know, that you've had and impacted families, organizations. You know, it's just incredible when you add everybody and every impact up. I know there's times where you have an effect on people and you don't even know that you have an effect on people until you bump into them years later and they go, hey, that thing that you said to me, you know. So I find that absolutely wonderful. I know you've got another couple of stories. I'd love you to share them with our audience on how you have impacted. So the intern was one story that you shared when we had a discussion a couple of days ago. Other stories of where you've helped people to move forward through the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I was going to share actually a nice little anecdote, but you know, it's so cool that we get more and more now feedback from people who are inspired by the Humanitix story to say, hey, hang on a minute, I'd really love to go and create a Humanitix in a whole other industry because I think this is really needed. And it was a huge step for us to make the decision to make Humanitix a non-profit, actually a registered charity, so that there's no shareholders and that cleanly all the profits can just simply flow into creating impact by funding education for disadvantaged kids. And this model is a big what if to then go off and say, well, what if it becomes a global dominant ticketing player that's actually a charity with an education mission? And that will hopefully continue to inspire more and more entrepreneurs to say, well, hang on a minute, maybe we can be looking at things differently in terms of how I might go about my entrepreneurial journey. Not that this is the only one. And so it's been really neat to see more and more people reach out to both of us with just kind messages and just asking for feedback on their own projects that they're working at. And it's phenomenal. It's really, really awesome to see.
And another story worth mentioning, you should tell a story about Rocco and how he actually learned about accessibility at events as an issue.
Yeah, about right at the beginning, we were a partner of Microsoft, our infrastructure, and we were heads down building this tech, the platform. Like I said, we needed to, in a rush, build better and better technology to go after more sophisticated events. Then Microsoft reached out to us and said, you know, we're having a hackathon for solutions for people with disabilities. And would you like to attend? So I said, yeah, sure, let's go. So I went down there with our CTO to attend this 2-day hackathon. And at the hackathon were people there who were blind, physically disabled, vision impaired, a whole range of disabilities. And then all the Microsoft team and lots of people and teams that wanted to participate in the hackathon. The request was simple. You've got 2 days, you've got people that you can chat to, find out problems that you can solve and hack together solutions. So we started talking to as many people as we could at this hackathon. The second we told them that we were a ticketing platform, they all said, just don't get me started. I don't go to live events anymore because it's always a disaster. And we said, well, hang on a minute. Why is that? It's like, well, you know, the organizer, I'm always made to feel, you know, bad because I'm my needs aren't catered for. The organizer doesn't quite know how to cater for them, and it's always not very well organized, and I just am made to feel a bit silly. And that was the feedback, unfortunately, that we got across the board. And then we started to do some more research, and we found out that the number one issue raised by people across Australia with disabilities is a lack of community participation and social inclusion. And that was really interesting because, at least to me, I would have assumed it was something more like issues with transport or issues with employment and these types of day-to-day things, but it's actually community participation and social inclusion. And events lie so much at the heart of that, of community participation. And we started to scratch our heads about how we could solve this problem, knowing that as the ticketing platform, we very much hold the key to many of the issues that we were being made aware of by the people at the hackathon. And so the question to them was simple, which was, what would give you confidence to attend a live event again? And how can we build that? And so we built that at the hackathon, and we finished it, put it in the platform, which is an awesome tool that takes organizers on a journey. It takes them like 3 to 5 minutes to fill out. And we guide them on the most helpful pieces of information that we learned that people with disabilities need to know to have confidence to attend an event. And it's the key stuff that helps you make your event accessible. And we said, well, we're launching this thing anyway. It doesn't matter if we win or not. We ended up winning the hackathon, and Vision Australia then said, came up to me after the presentation and said, hi, I'm from Vision Australia. I asked them, oh, what do you think? I mean, is that useful? We're just starting on this journey. She said, are you kidding me? Every single year we have our own event, and we can't get a platform that will work with us and make the, take this issue seriously. I think it's great. And you've thought outside the box. And so that's when this became, the accessibility side became this whole cool, interesting, unique, purpose-filled direction that we have simultaneously gone on whilst building out the ticketing engine to generate fees for education programs for disadvantaged kids. Opportunistic to do good, I guess is what you'd call it.
I love that, opportunistic to do good. But isn't it interesting what you get from listening and then acting? It's, you listen, you worried about the user experience. And I don't know when people stopped worrying about the user experience. I don't really understand that. But we see it, we see it constantly. Can I ask you, you have come through with some incredible associations, with the Facebooks and the Canvas of the world. Can you tell us and share a bit of the story about how they came to be, and how you reached out to people reached out to you? How did these associations form?
It's a great question. We've been incredibly lucky. We've punched well above our weight, especially in the early years. But our first massive break on that front was the Atlassian. At the Atlassian Foundation and Atlassian as a company. We actually started working with staff in the for-profit arm of Atlassian who were volunteering their time helping us, because this is a great tech project that they can actually help with. And we got to know their foundation staff through that journey. And at that point, the idea was still relatively embryonic. Now we're a major ticketing platform in Australasia, but back then it wasn't a PowerPoint, but it wasn't proven. And so they got involved, and they gave us 3-year funding that was, stepped on milestones that we had to hit. But we smashed the targets they gave us, and the relationships just turned into the most beautiful partnership I know of between a non-for-profit and a for-profit and the foundation. And so just last night, the head of their foundation was in our office, meeting with our whole team, geeing them up about our expansion. And it's just we work with them on everything. We work with them on our merchant facility. We work with them on our marketing strategies. And it's awesome to see a corporate foundation that integrated with the actual company. But they also helped us a lot. So when we got Google on board and with the Google Impact Challenge, Atlassian gave us a lot of credibility, and they gave us an awesome reference letter. And some of their staff came to the Google Impact Challenge to cheer us on. And then once you've got Google and Atlassian backing you, then you can get the meeting with Facebook. And we went over and we met with them in San Francisco, and got an awesome partnerships manager in Australasia who got what we were trying to do and is like, I want to do something good with this role, and this is a great opportunity. And most people are like that when given the opportunity. And similar with Canva, they've been incredible. Their staff have volunteered They've helped us a lot on a lot of the great initiatives, and we're the first ticketing platform in the world to integrate such that you can design your event images using all of Canva's tools native within our platform. It was a very cool launch in that, feature launch.
Absolutely cool launch. Like, how remarkable is that, and how wonderful for people that are running events to be able to brand it, the way that they want to brand it, and for the look and the feel to be that. But interesting, all the comments that you made around Atlassian as well. I think moving into the future, we know that an organization that doesn't have an affiliation with an impact group or isn't impacting at some level, isn't having some effect at a societal level, there's lots of research out there that says they're actually not going to make it through. And so you're about to expand again. What happens in that process of expansion? Do you put more staff on? Do you reach out to more clients? Like, how will you manage that expansion within Humanitix?
Well, firstly, there's a few technical problems to solve. Managing a platform across many different geographies that we've been focused on to make sure that things are performant and work well for an organizer. Because at the end of the day, if the technology doesn't work seamlessly, then it's a tough battle. So that's been the first thing that we've made sure to get right. Then secondly is around service and reaching out to the right organizers. And so we were in the process of setting up a team in the United States prior to COVID. When COVID hit, then we just kind of put all of that on hold, and we're just playing that by ear at the moment. But in the meantime, we're watching with a keen eye as we kind of look at what's happening over there and in different geographies in general. We're very much going into a global mindset. I think that's a good lesson for a lot of startups to try to adopt a global mindset as early as possible, because if technology's taught us anything, it doesn't have boundaries. And if you're just thinking in your local market, then there's a good chance you're thinking too small. So, we're watching keenly, and we'll move as things can emerge.
But to add to that, we have done all the work. So we're actually live in US dollars now. We've ticketed our first events across the States, but we're servicing out of Australia, so it's not as aggressive. It's a soft launch, and excitingly, tomorrow we launch our first event in Fiji, and I think a few months ago we did one in Lebanon. So it's exciting for the team here. We have a bit of a celebration. We might do a Fijian themed party later this month.
But it's very much around that iteration testing. I know very, very much in the early days, because we were early adopters of the Humanitix platform, in the early days, and I'm not suggesting that any of the listeners do this. I don't want your mobile phones overrun with calls, but I know that if we did have an IT issue and I sent you a text or made a call, you were straight onto it, because user X is absolutely crucial and fundamental to everything that you do. What processes do you use? And when you were first designing Humanitix, how did you go about making sure testing, iterating with the user X?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you. I mean, and thank you again for being one of our early adopters. We need to find the Christinas of the US, but that's our mission the next one. But on that, we've always looked at customer support and user experience, and it started with me and Adam, obviously, as bottom up. So we hire as many customer support people as we need to satisfy our customers, and then we work out how the budget will fit it. We don't go the other way around and hire 2 customer service people and roll with that for the next 6 months. And that served us well. We're the only ticketing platform I know of that during COVID, when it was the worst time comprehensible for event organizers, we didn't let go any of our customer support team. We were all full-time through the process. Some dropped to 4 days a week, but we were there all the time on the phone. You never had to wait a day or 2 to hear back from us. And it's that and our social impact and our tech that creates loyalty with our clients. So we don't see really any churn. It's amazing. But we can't lose sight of that, because I think culture comes from the top, and me and Adam still jump in and help clients. And no matter how big this gets, we'll always spend a time of our day doing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around culture, that and you see it, like Josh was mentioning, that the number one priority is a happy event organizer on the platform. a happy event organizer on the platform does so many things. It's motivating for the team. An organizer will go off and tell other organizers about Humanitix, which will create more impact. It stops you from pulling out your hair, because nothing's worse than somebody not having a nice experience on your platform, let alone then not handling it well, which then causes other kind of, angriness and people just being upset. And, something like support and customer service, account management is unfortunately something that's, I think, being too easily either just cut down or offshored, or, you're just trying to cut costs on it as much as you can, which, like every function in a business, you need to manage your costs. I think that's a function that is being too easily cut down, and it's the coalface of the business. It's where your customers meet your brand and get a feel about whether or not they're part of a family or whether or not they're part of a cold corporation that just wants their business. And you can't sacrifice on that, in our opinion.
I love that. Particularly, so I've had an experience with a large tech company lately, and I actually ended up putting something on Facebook, because they were counter what I was experiencing. And they said, oh, look, contact us immediately and we'll fix it up straight away. And we're really sorry that you've had this experience, and da-da-da-da-da. And I did exactly what they asked me to do. And 3 weeks later, I'm still waiting for them to react, just reply to an email. So hats off to you both. I know that you are instant in your customer service and your customer support. And I absolutely agree with you. That whole culture starts from the top. And, as they say, the fish rots from the head down. And I think you guys are doing pretty well. There's nothing fishy about Humanitix.
Just on that as well. That's a great saying. Sorry, I'm going to take that one. That's awesome. But we found we started Humanitix with the idea of it being a play on humanitarian and tickets. But as we've grown, no one really says that internally. We call it the humans of Humanitix. And it is that. It's like you speak to a human, not a bot.
I think that's wonderful. And I also relate to Humanitix as you get the tick from me at the end. I'm sorry, there's another thing that I'll just throw in. I know it stands for tickets, but for me, it's this big tick, because you cross off so many likables and essentials in the way that we do business as well. So let's get back to, you've mentioned COVID a couple of times, and it was, or it still is, because we're not out of it yet, but it has had the most amazing effect on the events industry. A lot of events have had to pivot, go digital. We've transferred a lot of our events digitally. The summit's going to go digital. How have you, because I know that you kept putting out communications. I know that you didn't let anyone go. And I know that you also got creative in the services that you were offering. Do you just want to expand and let some of our viewers know how that happened, why it happened, the processes that you used? Because I think you've handled that brilliantly as well.
Thank you. The first thing we did is our revenue went negative in April, not to zero, but negative. And that's because we said, if our clients, our event organizers are hurting and losing money, we're not going to add to that. We're going to lose with them. And so we're going to refund our fees if they cancel their tickets and have to refund them. And so not every ticketing platform does that. In fact, many don't. And that was hard, but we thought it was the right thing to do. It was consistent with our brand, and we were in a position to take the hit. But it was scary because we didn't know if this would last a year, 3 years, 5 years, and maybe we wouldn't be able to last the hit if it turned into 3 or 5 years. But we it's consistent with our values. We discussed it with our board, and that was really hard, but we did that. And we did, and the customer support side allowed our clients to pick up the phone and chat to someone as opposed to waiting 3 weeks to hear. Want to talk about the virtual events?
Yeah, just before that, the other thing we did was, as this all started to unfold with lockdowns coming in and us, going from, insane growth to then just all of a sudden over the space of a few days, it was like somebody turned the lights off. We wrote an email letter to the whole staff to inform them of what's happening and what our new mission and kind of vision is over this period, which was essentially outlining how our customers, our users, our organizers, which are our lifeblood, are hurting now. They're watching their livelihoods go up in smoke often. They're uncertain about what to do next. If you think we're, upset and concerned about what to do next, think about the thousands of organizers on our platform. And the best thing we can do right now is just do everything we can to help them with, sure, things like refunding our booking fees to take out the sting to their customers, but being on the front foot to offer alternative solutions to them, like, hey, what about our gift cards feature to use to offer to your clients as a credit? Perhaps they won't want a refund if you can give them a credit for a year's time and they can work with you. A lot of communications problems to solve. We had organizers looking at us to answer questions like, how do I communicate this to my patrons to get them to understand the position I'm in? So, giving them some sample communications that might help and that we're seeing working, and updating them on what we're seeing happening in the events industry. Obviously, we've got quite a pulse on what's generally happening across the industry, and making all of our staff realize that this is a moment that you need to step up for our event organizers, because it's not just the right thing to do, but this is the moment that people will remember how we responded. Do we respond out of a place of fear and start playing legal games and you owe me this and they owe me that and check the contract, or do we take a more long-term view and say, this sucks for everyone, how can we help? And I think that was a really key thing that kind of aligned the whole team onto a new renewed purpose, because it's quite demoralizing when you're going through insane growth and every week is this exciting conversation and a thing about the impact that we're making and the growth, to all of a sudden that not being the case. And I think that was quite a motivating thing for our team to align, to help our organizers.
How did you actually go about organizing? Because I know that you had a lot of workshops and you helped a lot of people reimagine what their events might look like, could be during this period of time. How do you sit down and come up with your formulas? I think it's really interesting for people not in this industry to hear how people go about ideating and then executing, because one of my favorite sayings is ideation without execution is hallucination. So how do you actually go from ideation through to execution with your teams, with your staff? Because I think that's a really important lesson for a lot of startups and small businesses and large businesses and large corporations to learn.
Firstly, I think we have a culture that you can openly share ideas and just put things out there. And if you're hearing something, if you're seeing something, do that. I mean, the other thing is having a great co-founder. I don't know how people do this on their own. It's just insane. I mean, you have to keep all that inside your own head as a leader during that kind of a time, as opposed to having a co-founder that you can talk to in pretty dark times. It's I don't know how the alternative exists, to put it bluntly. And so that was just so awesome. I mean, when we started to look at what tools we built for our organizers to help during this process, it was really just a matter of those day-to-day conversations with our event organizers to hear what they're doing, what their patrons are doing, what their alternatives are, what they're looking at trying to achieve. And then it was through that we then started to build tools like the Virtual Events Hub, where organizers could much more seamlessly host an online event or a hybrid event and have a nice seamless place that their customers can access the event through their ticket and neatly kind of go into this experience. That was really critical for us, I think. And then starting to make calls about, well, what's the next 6, 12, 18 months going to be like, because if your whole product strategy is just building for the next 6 months, and things might change in the 6 months after that and 12 months after that, then maybe you might be thinking too short term. So I think in the end, we ended up doing a bit of both, building really the helpful tools that we saw that we could build for organizers to run events in a virtual setting, while simultaneously looking forward and building features and improving the platform for live events, predicting a comeback in live events as well. And so that's turned out to be somewhat of a good decision as it's kind of played out. But it's so difficult because you're trying to predict how the world's going to look like in a pandemic that no one knows when it's going to end. Yeah.
And we don't know, do we? Because the whole, like, one day you might think that there's some security in the way things are operating, and then the next day South Australia's closed its borders to Melbourne. Like, we don't know. You used an interesting word, hybrid, that a lot of people are using now. How do you see the events industry going forward? So you just talked about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, but a lot of people are saying that what we do know is things won't go back to the way they were, although I think there's quite a few people hoping they will, because it gives them some sense of security and safety. But how are you seeing the word hybrid? How are you seeing the events industry into the future? What's the feel that you're getting from the people that you're working with?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something we've grappled with internally, and I think there's truth to both points. This has been amazing in some respects, in that people have been opened up to much wider audiences because they were forced to go online. There will be some form of hybrid events where there's a physical event, but people can also tune in. But ultimately what we saw, and we've got a team in Auckland and a really good operation in Auckland and New Zealand. They obviously came out of COVID a bit quicker than Australia in terms of restrictions. Things came back there roaring for physical events, more so than before COVID. And we saw that in our numbers. And it's because people were craving that human experience in person. And there's nothing like that. Tech it might be there in 10 years' time. It's not there yet. And
Western Australia too.
Western Australia, South Australia as well. And 2 days ago, we went live with Strawberry Fields. It's one of Australia's biggest music festivals. It was an awesome win for our team. And compared to previous years, they sold out in 20 seconds. And faster than ever before. And it was a great test for our team. Didn't have any issues. It was amazing. We've had a lot of other festivals contact us since in just the last few days. But people are craving it. I think I don't think physical events have changed forever. They will come back. And there'll be niches where hybrids make sense, probably more in the corporate sector, in my view.
I also think actually when there's a learning component to the event, I think the online format is going to stay in a pretty strong way. People are really keen to now, hey, hang on a minute, I can learn how to play better chess from a chess master in the United States or Russia, or vice versa. I think that learning component really lends itself to the online format, and so we're going to keep seeing that. When it comes to entertainment, that's tough. That's really tough to pull off in an online format, and where we've seen, to Josh's points on those types of genres coming back to live when given the opportunity.
I totally agree with you, and I think what we're finding, particularly in relation to the summit, is that we have a lot of business corporates saying to us, "Oh, this is great." Instead of sending 4 or 5, 10 people over to Sydney for a week, because by the time you do the 2-day event, you get there a day before, blah, blah, blah. They now can have people tune in live. And we've also gone out of our way to create some connecting scenarios where people can meet in each capital city if they want to. So I guess that's the type of hybrid event, but I very much agree with you. There's a lot of corporates who are saying this is great because it's a different, and also the other comment we've had is, great, we have a front row seat, whereas I know there's lots of times where I've been to a conference and I've spent my time looking at the screen rather than the stage anyway. And that's particularly, what now we're looking at a screen, but we're learning. But I absolutely agree with you, that excitement, that feeling that person next to you, that sharing the smile and the dance and the everything else of a live event. I can't wait to go to a concert again. I just want to dance live. So changes, yes, things will go back, things will change, things will, they'll meld and there'll be all these hybrids. What's your next big move? So we've talked about international expansion, and hopefully that will happen for you this year, or it will happen. It sounds like all the rows are lined up ready for you. Where do you see Humanitix in like 10 years time? So, we know that it's easy to see where we might stumble to in 12 months time. What's your 10-year plan? Do you have one?
we're going to be the biggest go-to, no-brainer events ticketing platform for event organizers of all shapes and sizes who prefer to see their booking fees going to funding education projects for disadvantaged kids across the globe. That's the goal. And
I love it.
because of that, I think our current focus is really now building for scale, both in the platform, but also in our operations. So, we've got great support, but how do you scale that great support? We've got great tech, how do you scale that great tech and keep building on it and improving on our core focus on what we've got and being better and better and staying focused on events, ticketing, and that process and that function for organizers so that we can just hand on heart, just be the best option for that tool in an organizer's toolkit.
So if I can take you back also, so we use technology to scale. Technology is a resource. It has allowed you to expand, not crash when Strawberry Fields book out in 20 seconds. How did you build the tech? So tech is integral to every business. If you don't have tech involved in your business at some level, I think we'd struggle to find a business that didn't use tech in some format. Are you code writers? Did you get right behind it? Did you find university students? How did you go about writing? What did you pull in the beginning? How did all that start? Because tech's it's a pretty big subject.
Sure is. I mean, it was a super iterative approach. So the very first thing we did was actually license an existing ticketing platform that had some basic tools and features for a very small amount of money that we could just simply use and as a pilot to try the concept out with some organizers. And that meant a hell of a lot of manual work in the back end. So that was literally us building events on behalf of event organizers. So that was before the days that you could go to humanitix.com, just sign up, create your own event and be the master of your own destiny. And instead it was, well, tell us about your event and we'll build it for you. And, that was cool because we had a ticketing platform, but it wasn't so cool because, if the organizer wanted to change so much as a full stop on their event description, they had to email that through to us and have us change that. And so that was really step one. And that was a really, on reflection, I'm really happy that we did that because rather than dusting a whole bunch of money on building something that we don't yet know is going to work or be compelling, we just did that. And it was a great test. And then after that, we built we spent some money assembling a team to build a very basic, again, ticketing platform, but that really satisfied the self-service nature of the events market that we were going for. So that simply ticked the box of you can go to our website, create your own event, go live with it, and have that control. And see whether or not that would be something that looks promising again as another test. And again, we did that for a year or so. And the results we got from that was phenomenal. It was another big growth in the organization. And that was literally by taking a whole bunch of WordPress plugins and sticking them together and making this kind of hodgepodge of plugins to create a ticketing platform that could do self-service ticketing. And with the results we got back from that, we said, right, okay, ticketing seems to be the most phenomenal industry to go at with this type of idea and concept. And we've learned so much in the process of what organizers want, what they care about, the types of things that we should be focused on building and improving, that now we're going to go and take a clean slate with now an engineering team and ourselves and build from scratch the Rolls-Royce ticketing platform that will be our future. And it was only on that third iteration that we then built the platform that you see today and continue to build on.
So this is your third iteration?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty good.
This is actually the Tesla iteration of the Rolls-Royce.
I love the fact that you relate to it as a Rolls Royce. I've got an absolutely beautiful comment in the chat box that I'd love to read out. Tony Benner from Sydney Rotary. A lot of our events this year are going to be hybrid. I want to pay tribute to the team at Humanitix for the great platform and guidance given to us as we change the way we meet. Thanks, guys. When you've got people like that making comments like that, it is like that says it all, really. How did you help Rotary? What was the process there? Did they come to you? Did you how did that work?
We were reaching out to the Sydney Rotary and Tony a few years ago, and it's the perfect alignment because Rotary is trying to change the world. We're trying to change the world. Like, it's just a perfect natural marriage. But yeah, Beck and Ben, who were they were big in the Rotary community and Rotaract community, which is an associated younger arm of Rotary. I met Ben through my old job. Lovely guy. Met his partner Beck, and we got super involved with Rotaract, and that was kind of our door into the Rotary world. And to be honest, I hadn't been exposed to Rotary before this intermarrying for where I just knew they were doing amazing things to eradicate polio vaguely. But it's opened up our appreciation of just like it's massive Rotary. It's one of everyone should know about Rotary. The highest quality people we've met through Rotary. And so, yeah, through that, can't remember exactly how we got in touch with the Sydney Rotary Club, but I remember reaching out to them, chatting to Tony, and yeah, absolute legend for actually backing us and giving us a go.
I've got to share a Rotary story as well. So when I was a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I won a Rotary Youth Leadership Award scholarship. And I thought, Rotary, I'm not going to do that. I'm too cool for school. I played in a band. I was in, every drama play that moved. How was Rotary going to send me to a leadership thing, And I've got to say, it was the most life-changing experience. So I am totally indebted to Rotary as well. And I absolutely back your comments. Everybody should know about Rotary. Everyone should get involved. They do the most remarkable things and have impact on so many people. In fact, I'd credit Rotary for me and the work that we do with Singularity U right now. So thank you, Rotary, for me as well. We're almost out of time, guys. And I love talking to you as always. And I love the fact that you're always thinking and you're always moving ahead and you're always iterating and you're always helping people and the user experience and everything. Like, I'm just such a big fan. If you had a parting word to say to event organizers, because it has been tough for event organizers, and B, to startups, and it's really curious because we've had this conversation before. When are you a startup and when do you advance beyond startup, and what's the real definition of a startup now? But all that aside, what would be a final word to event organizers who still aren't sure about where things are going to go? Lockdowns could happen at any second, things like that. And what would be a final word that you would say to startups, given that you shared a wage, that you made this commitment to each other many years, or not many years ago, you guys aren't that old, but quite some years ago, and here it is, this is where it's got you. Final word from both of you, or final 2 words or a few words, whatever that takes.
I'd say to organizers, in this environment now, you can have a lot of confidence to go ahead with a concept and an event if you focus on your communication with your patrons. We've seen time and time again that if patrons have a clear understanding of what the event is and what the plan will be if, unfortunately, the government locks everything down, the response is amazing. People say, you know what? Okay, thank you. I get it. I understand that hopefully this can all go ahead. If it doesn't, this is what's going to happen. And I'm going to buy into that, or not. But what you'll see more often than you think is that people buy into that, and people are reasonable, because it's not your fault as an event organizer if you have to abide by new lockdown rules that could even happen overnight. And I think that smarter organizers are wisening up to being confident and communicating well with clarity.
Yeah, just to add to that, unfortunately, when COVID hit, no one had comms out about what they'd do if COVID hit. And so there were some really sad examples of patrons not being understanding. But more and more now, it's kind of become part of it. Like, if you buy a ticket to an event, that's a risk, and people are less pushy and upset about, you know, potentially having to compromise on what they eventually get. We saw Strawberry Fields do an incredible thing I hadn't seen before, but they went out and said, hey, here's our ticket price. If COVID shuts this down, we'll give you back 80 or 90% of your money, but we have to spend some money in the lead up. So if you want to support these types of events, you got to share the risk with us. Like, and you know, that was so awesome to see. And it was so awesome to see people still support the arts. And I think it's on the public to say, hey, if we want arts and entertainment and education, we've got to wear the risk as well.
They sold out in under a minute, knowing that the event might not happen. And if it doesn't, they'll get a 90% refund. I mean, that says a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks to what you said about being upfront, you know, and then also I think what we noticed was somebody asked for a refund and you just went, of course, you know, and it might take me a couple of weeks to get you a refund, or, you know, I might need a little bit of time, but all the refund policies that said absolutely no refund, all that kind of thing. Because I know we've actually been in a position where people can't travel and they can't plug into the times or whatever it is. And they've sort of, I'd really appreciate a refund. And that's where we kind of go at the end of that. But I love that. I love the fact that, and I might borrow that, because there are risks that event organizers do take, and there's a certain amount of money that we spend consistently, whether the event happens or doesn't happen. So, you know, that's quite a wonderful story to share.
Yeah.
Advice to startups, what would you say to them?
First one, this one. Yeah, sure. I think Adam already touched on thinking globally as early as possible. I'd say, you know, the biggest piece of advice I've always got is, you know, if you can do it with someone that you trust and can work with, and that, you know, I'm lucky, we're best friends too, but we've had 2 rules from the start, which has kept us super tight. Like, you know, last night we were out for dinner with our partners. We don't get sick of each other, but we had 2 rules that kind of kept our relationship healthy. One is you raise it early. So if Adam's borrowing my pen and never returning it, and he steals 3 of my pens a week, it sounds really petty, but I got to raise that with him as soon as I'm conscious of it. And if I don't, and I raise it with him that it's been happening for 2 months, it's actually my fault. And he can say, why didn't you say something for 2 months? You're breaking our #1 rule, dude. Like, you risked our friendship. I just took a pen, but you risked our friendship and our partnership. And so, you know, a pen's a ridiculous example, but the thing is, it's petty, small things and the bigger things. And that way nothing escalates. And we actually realize that's just like a good lesson for life. That's not even, like, try to take that to my relationships outside of work. But and the other one was, it's never going to be equal. And sorry, I know you asked the one, but the idea that's never going to be equal is, you know, if something goes wrong with the tech, this guy might be working till 2 in the morning, and I'll say, what's on your plate that I can take, but I can't solve that problem. And, you know, something else might be wrong in the business, which is my domain, even though there's a lot of crossover. And so it's never going to look like a straight line. And if we just recognize that and respect each other's work ethics, there will never be animosity. There will never be jealousy. There will never be resentment. And so it's just those 2 kind of rules that I'd recommend to founders, particularly if they've got a co-founder.
Yeah. Lisa and I have a saying, because Lisa's an accountant by trade, and we have a saying that she does the 1, 2, 3s and I do the ABCs, and there's a lot of crossover in that, but it works really well for us as well. What about you? Do you have any final words for startups?
I couldn't imagine what life would be like if I hadn't taken the plunge into doing this. And I think that the lesson there is to, you know, when we were launching this, we were doing a non-profit charity startup. And not everyone has to do that, but we were looked at like, what the hell is going through your head? I mean, startups are risky as it is, and you're taking on all this risk and not even giving yourself the opportunity for a massive payout at the end of the day, which is, you know, the key driver of many startups. And, you know, we're coming from a different place. And what was, I think, helpful on reflection is to, you know, work out what race you're running and just calmly run that race and find the people that believe in you and appreciate the people that don't, but just choose to, you know, go elsewhere, and just calmly do your own race, and to what speaks to your values and how you want to be spending your life and your time. And you won't be too disappointed after a few years.
I'm going to take the word calmly out of that and embed that into everything that we do, hopefully, at SU. We've had a remarkable day today with the media launch. I can tell you we did not start the day calmly, but I really like that. I'm going to end my day calmly with you both. It has been, as always, an absolute pleasure to speak to you, Adam and Josh. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm grateful for everything that you do. I think the impact that you're having on the world is remarkable. Look forward to supporting you for many years to come. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
I'll give you a quick one, by the way, on that calmly. Is
Yeah.
slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Always keep that in the back of my mind.
I've got it.
Thank you, Christina, and congrats on the launch, and thanks for supporting what we do, and yeah, love what you do as well.
Thank you.
Thanks
And
for
thank
that.
you to everybody for joining us on the salon this afternoon. If you're doing nothing at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, please join us for Technologies of the Future, hosted by the wonderful Lisa Andrews, where we wrap up the week. We'll be sharing a bit about the things that came out of the media launch today, some of the new tech that we saw. So join us tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.
See you, Christina. Thank you.